I don't think it's exactly a hot take to say that the Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson was peak cinema. Every decision made and everything that happened before, during, and after the production all blended together to give us a series of movies that has never been topped. With 2026 being the 25th anniversary of Fellowship of the Ring, you'd have thought that in that time, someone would have come along and said, "That's awesome, but here's something better," and actually followed through on that promise. Fuck off, Amazon. Many have tried and failed to kick The Lord of the Rings from its throne as the undisputed king of Movie Mountain, but nothing has. It stays as a shining example of filmmaking. But why? Well, today, Your Honour, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, with a deviation away from my usual gaming content, I would like to ask, and maybe answer the question, of why it never got better than The Lord of the Rings. Exhibit A, the source material. Professor Tolkien spent years crafting the perfect world for what he described as a mythos for England. Thousands of pages of notes, drawings, letters and ideas that help sculpt the mythology, the people, the geography, languages, and thousands of years of history that gives Middle-earth the richness that it has. It's thanks to this that the so-called unfilmable book was able to be done. And yes, while it is true if you shot The Lord of the Rings page by page, scene by scene, that it would just be a mess, the people behind the scenes were able to take the life's work of one of the greatest authors to exist and mould it into a filmable version that keeps everything and every lesson intact. Which brings us to Exhibit B, the people behind the scenes. The production story for The Lord of the Rings is possibly the most fascinating in all of Hollywood. Miramax initially financing the movies only for them to end up saying they wanted it done in one film. Peter Jackson sticking to his guns, saying there was no way he could do it in one film and do justice to the story. Peter and Fran Walsh taking the pitch of 2 movies to New Line Cinema, only for Bob Shaye to ask, why do 2 films when there should be 3? The 3.5 years of pre-production before cameras started rolling. Richard Taylor heading up Weta Workshop to help bring the visual spectacle of the book to real life. 2 of the most renowned Tolkien artists, Alan Lee and John Howe, bringing their decades of love for the books to assist the creation. Alex Funk's team of miniature photographers being able to get up close to the bigatures, as they were dubbed, for added detail. Nyla Dixon with her 40 seamstresses bringing what was merely suggested on the page and taking that to tell us what the clothing and the styles of these characters were. And of course, Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, the 3 responsible for taking Tolkien's work and creating the script. Now, while I've taken my shots at Philippa for her creation, that was the Roar of the Rohirrim. Yes, that was a thing. At this time, there was no doubt that the 3 of them really did want to do justice to Tolkien's vision. There were many more important roles who I didn't name for the sake of time, but the point is, the people you have in front of the camera mean nothing if you don't have the right people behind it. You need talented men and women behind the scenes to let the actors play out an incredible story. And if the script is shit, if it looks cheap, and they plainly either didn't give a fuck or went into it with malicious intent, then your film is screwed from the get-go. Exhibit C, the cast. I don't think there has been a more well-cast collection of characters than what was achieved with The Lord of the Rings. Even more than that, I don't think anyone else could have played any of these roles individually better than who were in the final product. We've heard about Stuart Townsend initially being cast in the role of Aragorn and Peter Jackson deciding at the last moment that they had cast the role a little too young. Viggo Mortensen was contacted for a split-second decision to travel to New Zealand and join the cast while they were already a few days into shooting. Then there's Sean Connery being approached for Gandalf. Now, no one can imagine anyone other than Ian McKellen truly being in that role. Even though the thought of James Bond screaming at a Balrog is pretty funny. Even though the late Christopher Lee may have gained a reputation for playing villains, Saruman was made for him. No one else but John Rhys-Davies could have played Gimli. Only the Hobbits could have played the Hobbits. No one could remove Bernard Hill from his seat in the Golden Hall. Only Miranda Otto could shove a sword into the Witch King's face. The devotion and the love that every actor brought to this project and their characters shines through and you feel it while watching. Even to the extent of having copies of the book on set, Ian McKellen even told Sean Astin to grab Frodo's hand in Rivendell. It's in the book. No one else has done it to this degree before or since. Exhibit D, the lack of unnecessary CGI. Modern Hollywood falls into the trap constantly of just using CGI because it's easier and quicker, but it looks so much worse. Effects houses are being worked to the bone with little to no thanks, and have to complete the work in an unrealistic time. The level of detail that was used to create the world of Middle-earth on screen is unparalleled. The excellent use of miniatures mixed with matte painting backdrops. The level of prosthetic work to bring the elves, dwarves and orcs to life. It's so expertly done that you can lose yourself in the world and allow it to reel you in. And that was the goal.
If you couldn't rise to the highest level of enthusiasm, passion and professionalism and grasp this task as if it was the most important thing that you have ever taken on in your life, you weren't worthy of the task.
The only use of CGI is to enhance what is already there, or to do something that would have actually been impossible to do. Mountain trolls aren't actually real. You couldn't get 6,000 horsemen to charge at an army of orcs outside a 7-tiered medieval city. Only the needed use makes the experience of watching it so much more special. Actually seeing actors outdoors with real wind blowing through their hair, in actual lighting, is something we don't really see much of nowadays. Exhibit E, the score. I don't think I need to go into this one very much. Everyone knows what Howard Shore has done, and his masterpiece of a score will go down in history as one of the greatest to ever be composed. In my opinion, greater than Star Wars, and while something like that and Harry Potter might be more iconic, The Lord of the Rings is truly special. Almost all 3 of the movies are scored, over 13 hours of music across the 3 extended editions. The score runs almost continuously alongside the movies that creates an operatic and immersive experience. Shaw scored nearly every scene, creating over 100 leitmotifs to represent characters, different cultures, and the geography of Middle-earth. I don't need to go on. The score slaps, and if you don't love it too, then you're tapped in the head. Exhibit F, the lessons to be learnt.
Well, we didn't want to put any of our own, certainly in terms of the thematic material, we didn't want to put any of our own baggage. I mean, we had no interest in putting our messages into this movie, but we thought that we should honour Tolkien by putting his messages into it.
This is the main reason why these films worked as well as they did. Jackson was smart enough to know that to add anything or take anything away would fundamentally ruin what Tolkien tried to show. The Lord of the Rings teaches heroism. It teaches kindness, self-sacrifice, the values of hard work, loyalty, perseverance, and shows it all through the actions of flawed but well-meaning people. But most importantly, lessons of love, and not in the kind of the romantic sense. There's a type of love that I think goes deeper than any romance, and it's that of friendship. The kind of love you have for someone who you simply cannot do without. That helps give a new layer of meaning to your life that adds to whatever destiny may have in store. And that sometimes it's enough, because that feeling of friendship, of brotherhood, of fellowship, it's about the greatest gift that one friend can give another. In conclusion, The Lord of the Rings is the greatest cinematic trilogy ever to exist. It has not been topped since its release, and will likely never be. The circumstances of this trilogy's birth cannot and will not be replicated again. This was a once-in-a-lifetime project, and while there's a part of me that mourns for the small child I was when my dad first showed me these movies in 2004, thinking it can only get better from here, the rest of me knows, and I think is okay with the fact that it will never get better. Because everything blended together perfectly to create 3 movies that I make a point of watching at least once a year. Movies that can still make me laugh at jokes I've heard 100 times, that still make me smile at good triumphing over evil, and the coming together of people from all walks of life to unite against a common trouble. The lessons of love and brotherhood. Something that can still bring a tear to my eye. And for films that I've seen more times than I can count, that's not a bad thing.